We'll do a quick introductions and then I'll have a quick just welcome. So I'm Brendan Clark, a water resources engineer for the county. One of my roles is program manager for our integrated regional water management program. And I'll just let everyone introduce themselves real quick.
Courtney Howard, Water Resources Division Manager for County Public Works.
Gonna carry you more later program on the restoration program.
Karen White, Michelle Vago, advisor.
Shirley Gibson, President of Oceana Community Services District.
Peter Brown, also with CSD.
Rosemary Gaglione, Pismo Beach.
Nick Teague, Water Resources Program Manager for the City of San Luis Obispo.
Tristan Reaper from Cambridge CSD.
Ray Genzel from the Public CSD. Ron Muntz from the Social CSD.
Good morning, my name is Jeff Edwards from Los Osos.
Hey, good morning, Scott Duffield, Area Grant Community Services District. Joe Style, County Public Works.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for coming, and just acknowledge off the front, we haven't met for almost 3 years, and so I had no idea what kind of response we'd have to maybe a 9-day heads up to a meeting. So I appreciate everyone being here today for what we're here to discuss. And so we've just done our introduction and welcome. We'll just do if there's any public comment or member updates. I'll do a brief program update, funding updates, and then we'll get into kind of the main topic of the day. So if there's anyone who'd like to make a public comment about items not on the agenda, or if any members would like to provide an update. Put everyone on the spot really quick. Excellent. For general program and funding updates, just as a kind of a quick reminder, an overview, the Regional Water Management Group advises the lead agency, which is the Flood Control and Water Conservation District Board of Supervisors. So this group advises the board on all things IRWM, Integrated Regional Water Management. And mainly that's in the plan and grants. And so for those who recall, for years we were maintaining or responding to multiple grant opportunities. I know when I came on board in 2018, we had 5 open grants and pending grants. We had a plan update, so this group was obviously meeting regularly to advise on those activities. In the last few years, there haven't been as many activities to warrant pulling the group together once the plan was updated and we responded to the most recent grant opportunity. There aren't any grant opportunities right now on the horizon. And just to mention Prop 4 briefly, there was some funds that were set aside or kind of marked for integrated water management, not specifically our program, but DWR received a lot of funding that didn't have as much detail as they needed to act on. So there's other programs like Coastal Conservancy and State Water Board who had existing programs filled by Prop 4, but DWR has to go back to the assembly and to get more direction on how to use the funds from Prop 4. So kind of no idea how this is going to work out with IRWM, if there's going to be specific funds for IRWM or not, or this group from our planning to morph a little bit, if the program's going to evolve. So I wish I had kind of more information there, but there's not a lot right now. And so just real quickly, in general, with the funding, all of our grants are closed except for the Prop 1 Round 2 grant that we worked on in 2022, and I'll overview that here in a moment. We have the Prop 1 Round 1 grant is completely closed out and closed with the state, and I believe just Oceano and Los Osos are doing their post-performance reporting and each have 1 year left. The city may have 1 year left as well, but you guys might be done. And I know Napalmo is complete as well. And so we are, and I'll go through the timeline a little bit with round 2, but this is currently our only open grant right now. Any questions? I'm not going to go through the program in a lot of detail, but if there are kind of any high-level questions about the program or previous funding or anything, I'd be happy to answer them right now.
Very quick,
Yes, sir.
this was somewhat development committee for the last couple of years. What triggers like you and county staff wanting to get feedback?
Sure. Yeah, I believe in the MOU, it's significant updates to the IRWM plan. So when we were updating the plan from 2014 to the 2021 version, and responding to any funding opportunities, or if an existing funding opportunity would have a change, we're proposing a change in the award. So, you know, it's essentially, you know, why we're here today. So the board has authorized us for projects at certain award values to apply for. And so any changes to those specifics would require us to kind of come back to the group and go through the process again. If DWR were to put out a new funding opportunity or say, hey, if you want to we're going to continue to have IRWM and here's $500 million for the state and your plan needs to do A through J, the group would be brought back together and we would be going through every month or every 2 months how we're meeting those requirements and so how we all can maintain eligibility for those funds. So those types of things. All right, well, that brings us to the topic of the day. I want to provide an update on the Central Coast Blue Project Award in the round 2 implementation grant and have the group consider actions today. So I'm going to go through the grant award process briefly, the county's understanding the status of the project and what our next steps are. I'll just say here at the beginning, I'm not going to go through every headline and every issue. I'm going to kind of go through what, you know, where we were and where we are now and what the results are. And then the city of Pismo Beach will have an opportunity to share as well. And then we can discuss. So first, just a reminder and kind of this is one slide on the history. This getting to going from a potential funding opportunity, a grant opportunity from the state to an agreement with the state was a 2-year process. It was about 11 months. We started in January of 2022 when the draft guidelines came out. And that was an 11-month process to get to the authorization with the Board of Supervisors to apply for a certain suite of projects, which I showed earlier. City of Morro Bay, City of Pismo Beach, Oceana, San Miguel, the district. And part of that process included projects being submitted in to staff and being presented back to this committee, being presented to the Water Resource Advisory Committee. And then these projects were scored and ranked based on grant requirements and project readiness. And based on those scores and rankings, projects were recommended by a working group from this committee and then to the whole RWMG, to the RAC, and then to the board to be authorized. And then as you can see, it's almost a year from application submittal to actually getting that agreement with the state. So that ends with 2023. We have our agreement, and that kind of coming to specifically to Central Coast Blue, kind of starting in 2024. The project has gone through some changes and some difficulties. And that has resulted in what county staff believe is a significantly different project than what was submitted for review, authorized for application and awarded by DWR. And I kind of have the highlights here. The submitted project was going to be up to 900 acre feet with up to 4 injection wells, 9 monitoring wells, and a completion in September 26, and was a multi-agency regional project. The current project, this is based on communication with the city in the last few months, is about 350 acre feet with 3 wells and construction schedule that will be after the term of the grant. Right now, our grant term ends June 30th, 2027, and all construction actually has to be complete March 31st, 2027. And it is currently not a multi-agency project. So now this was some of you might be thinking, this was a year ago. Why are we doing this now? The project, at one point, the city requested a year pause to plan the project and to think about, and to, retool and kind of figure out what they were doing after some of the situations came up. And, it's been a year, and this is where the project is currently at. And so what the staff feeling is, and district management and staff, is that the project is at a crossroads with the grant. We feel like we need a decision related to the project. Is it gonna stay, or is it gonna go? The grant requirements are that the construction be complete by March 31st, 2027. And so in any scenario, an amendment is required. And there are two options for amendments. We could attempt to amend the grant with the current version of the project. This is not, we don't think this is appropriate. We don't think this is the right move, given that the project is, the benefits and the timeline are significantly different than what was submitted and approved or recommended by this and approved by our board. We also are unsure, we don't have confidence that DWR would be supportive of an amendment request at this time. We've informally discussed with them the issues and this proposal for an amendment, and they indicated they generally do amendments for projects in construction, not for projects in planning. And so the conversation I had with them a year ago. So one of the other options would be to amend the grant with a replacement project. And this is our recommendation. And so this would be a two-step process for this group. The first step is for you today to go to the board and get authorization for us to go do a call for projects and to see what's out there, see what else is out there. Is the current vision of Central Coast Blue the best project for these funds to be in the county, to make sure we keep these funds in the county? The main thing we're trying to avoid as staff is losing these funds and having these funds be unspent. And our belief is that if this project maintains in the grant as it currently is, we risk losing those funds. So where we're going is we're going to be going to the Board of Supervisors this summer with the recommendation here before you to get direction to open up a call for projects and see what else is out there. And the city of Pismo Beach would be welcome to resubmit this project for scoring or another project, and to ensure that these funds are going to get spent in the time that we have. So that's essentially the overview, again, without going into every little detail. And so the recommendation for today is that the RWMG recommend the Board of Supervisors direct staff to return to the board with a proposed project or suite of projects to replace Central Coast Blue in the Route 2 grant. And I want to make one note, a couple notes, I guess, before we go into discussion. One is if the RWMG recommends, let's just say A, and the board does B, our MOU does require the board to hold a hearing between the RWMG and the Board of Supervisors to resolve that difference. So it's part of the unique decision-making process that the RWMG was set up with. So that's one thing just to kind of keep an eye on. This clause of the MOU has never come up before, so I don't totally know how it would work. But there are a couple sentences here about if the board goes a different direction than the RWMG, there will be a hearing. And the decision will be up again. Yes. And second is before I take any questions, I'm gonna have Ms. Marie come up and share a little bit about where Pismo is, and so we can go from there into our discussion.
All right, thank you. I'm Rosemary Gaglione. I am still fairly newly the Public Works Director for Pismo Beach. I do want to say that one of the things we sort of differ in the opinion that it's a significantly different project. It is reduce in the amount of water that it would produce, but it's still a recycled water project. Basically, we did, when we submitted some paperwork to Brendan, we did say 350 acre feet. We're doing modeling, we're guaranteed that. We are still trying to push to 600 acre feet on the well that, in the injection well that we're going to use. We do have a new well that we're putting in that we need to do anyway, but that well would also be perfectly sited for Central Coast Crude, and that will be construction by the end of 2026. We really need to be moving on that.
What kind of well is that?
This is a replacement for well 23.
Okay, so it's an extraction.
Yeah, an extraction well, right. And we know it would be great, totally clear for 350 acre feet. Now we're working on modeling to see what else we can get. We have a well it's turned into a sander, and so we're having to run it at reduced capacity, and that's not helping us at all. I will say that I do understand the trepidations. I wasn't here before for a lot of this, but this project is a real project. It is moving forward. We do have a Bureau of Reclamation grant for almost $17 million. We have the ability to get another $27 million in the revolving grant, state revolving grant funds. And we have a water control board grant for $8 million. We had the water recycling granted 15 million, and with the state budget that got put down to 3, but there's a potential that will go back up to 15. So Pismo's moving forward. Pismo never stopped moving forward. We just were remiss in sharing information. But at the same time, it probably gave a nice time to sort of let the dust settle. And while it's wonderful to have partners, and I don't really know intimately about the partnerships that we had because I wasn't here, sometimes it's easier when it's one entity leading the way. They say the complexity of a project is the square of the number of participants. And so in this case, we've gone from a complexity of 9 to a complexity of 1. We would hope that our former partners will be customers one day because we're all going to need the water. I do believe of any of the projects that could be funded, I think that creating new water is the most important thing we can do. If we look at the preliminary injunction and how much all of us depend on Lake Lopez water, and we can't really depend on, we really don't know what's going to happen. So the ability to take a resource that we're dumping into the ocean and create new water is really important. Well, I don't know that I can ask you to, stand behind and tell the board, yes, you want to move forward with this. Perhaps you could opt to not decide and let the board decide and allow us to, at that time with additional information, we'll have the complete modeling. That's going to be in another couple of weeks on this new site, that we could come in with a full presentation to the board and perhaps allow them to make the decision at that time. As I said, we're moving forward in terms of benefit. This is a $1 million grant. And we have this other money. We have this great benefit overall. So it's still, I think, on $1 per acre foot for the grant. It's a good deal. I understand nobody wants to lose money. Again, that's rule number 1, don't lose the money. So we don't want to see that happen. We're looking at either doing design build or progressive design build, which would allow us to get into construction in 27. I don't know if this other well can be considered a part, like being in construction, just because it will eventually serve the project, although it is not right now. It is just a replacement of our failing extraction well. But it's going to take time to select a new project and come back to the board and have a project get started. So there's a risk there. So I would just ask for your consideration in terms of those things. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you, Brendan.
Yes, thank you.
One thing that comes to mind that you guys maybe haven't considered is the dual track of those 2 options you mentioned, Brandon, which would be, even if chances are low, or it's kind of a unique situation. I know what DDR was talking about when they say, yeah, we do like extensions and amendments in construction, because that's very common. It's also pretty uncommon that, group like 2/3 of the partners pull out. So one option to consider would be dual track, which is have Pismo make the case through you guys, DWR, of an amendment or what they would be doing under the guise of recycled water. And at the same time, prep a call for projects in the event that is denied by DWR. It kind of opens the door for both. I don't know if you guys think that might work, but it's just an option to consider, just throwing it out there. Because I do also understand your position where you're talking about call for projects. You got $1 million, you know, maybe we fund 3 great projects with that, or maybe it's another $1 million project that is shovel ready. But those are also a lot of ifs.
Yeah.
So anyway, just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I think, I personally, I don't mind that course of action. The way, we feel, as staff is that any of these directions are outside of our normal administering amendments.
So
We do amendments, we've done amendments for every grant. They're not here, so I could, you know, Templeton was building their conjunctive use project. Their pumps were delayed months and months and months. And it required an extension, but they were already in construction. It was going, this was a normal, you know, we considered it a, you know, if this is a normal thing that happens in the progression of the project, you know, was on track and as applied for. And so we went for an amendment without asking, you know, we think that's in the normal operation and
Sure.
administration of the grant. You know, I could go through a few other examples as well, but so I do think because of the schedule and the reduced benefits, and I use the word significant, I know Rosemary disagrees, but with the scope of the project being so much smaller, you know, we feel, you know, at the district that it's not within our realm to just, without getting input from the group or the board, to do it. So I would say if that was something the group wanted to recommend, the group could totally recommend that. So, for us to go take to the board.
Thanks, Brendan. So, a follow-up question. Well, first of all, question to Rosemary. So you said that the project is moving forward, but so obviously it's reduced. So is the project moving forward only going to benefit Pismo at this point, since you're the only partner?
No.
Okay.
No, it won't. Actually, just the fact that this water is going in helps the gradient, right? It helps to prevent seawater intrusion, so we'll protect the basin. And we would hope that, you know, other agencies, if they need water, will want to purchase that water for our cost of producing it. So we're still seeing this as having a regional benefit. If nothing else, it is helping hold back seawater, because a little bit gets in, it's a big impact, right?
So, and then the other question too is mostly directed to Brendan, is that was when the scoring was done for this project, was it under that presupposition that it was going to have the benefits of all the other partners that were participating, that were like on board at the time? Was that part of the consideration of the scoring, of why they got awarded the project in the first place?
yes.
Yes,
I mean, they kept, I know, like multiple times submitting that Central Coast Blue project, they wasn't ready yet, wasn't ready. And then finally, there was enough, when the working group scored it, showed readiness, and now it's not ready.
yeah, so I would say, I'd want to get my scoring out to provide you a very clear, these are the 12 points that every project was evaluated against. One of 6 of those points were about project readiness. And so that what made this project even eligible for the funding was this construction date that was before the term of the grant. It was very clear in the grant, this is the construction date. And so that made the project eligible. I would say the project description submitted had always been very clear. This is a regional, the map provided showed the injection wells up along Grover Beach and Oceano, the 4 sites there. So
But to Ray's point, AG and Grover were partners. when this was an application, there
Yes.
was 3 cities that were all partners, and they've since pulled out, so that's the main change.
It was submitted it was pre-JPA, so it was submitted actually as a City of Pismo Beach, City of Arroyo Grande, City of Grover Beach project. And in the course of the application, we had to pick one agency,
Uh-huh.
and the JPA hadn't quite come up and running yet, and so it was awarded to Pismo Beach. Yes, Ray, Ray, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Jeff,
Thanks, Brendan. My name again is Jeff Edwards. Coincidentally, I've been following CCB since about 2013. I didn't support it then and I don't support it now. CCB has no permits as far as I'm aware, no coastal development permit. Their CEQA document is stale. They actually withdrew their coastal development permit from the coastal commission after it was consolidated by our board of supervisors. I'm not aware of SRF loan application, whether or not it's been filed yet. I don't believe it has. The seawater intrusion fiction apparently continues to be perpetuated. I support staff's recommendation, no amendments for this project. And in fact, there are other replacement projects in Los Osos in particular. We have a project that I think would very much be supported, could be supported by this $1 million. We have a $8 to $10 million state water project intertime that we're pursuing. We have a CEQA document. And so I, again, support staff's recommendation and urge a call for projects as soon as the board of supervisors takes final action on this to move forward and move past CCD. Thanks.
are there any other comments or questions?
Just thinking, it kind of, staff's recommendation kind of. Maybe it's not as explicit, but it seems like it does do the parallel path thing, because nothing changed until or if the RDNG found another project to replace it. And that's what we're trying to accomplish within the time frame. But anyway, it's just a comment.
Yeah,
That maybe whether they wants to do something more explicit. I think it would effectively.
in the open, I would have our recommendation to the board say, in parallel, officially submit a request to DWR and see what they say, like essentially ask the board to direct us to do that. I don't know, again, it's a different, it's a different project. So, but our recommendation to our request to the board could be a dual direction. So. Scott.
Thanks. You mentioned the completion date of the construction is March 31st, 27. Is that the definition of completion of? Is there a definition of completion or is it money spent?
All work shall be completed by March 31st, 2027. In accordance with the schedule of the grant, and no funds may be requested after June 30th. So it's they generally provide 3 months from, to close things out or to send in your invoice. The last invoice is June 30th, meaning in their mind, work has to be done March 31st, and that's page 1 of the agreement.
You mentioned that Templeton did a extension though for delays in receiving the pumps. Did that affect the completion time for that particular opportunity or?
I'd have to go check. We have done amendments that extended the grant term. There's schedule appears twice in the agreements. I'm pulling up the agreement. Paragraph 2 is the term of the agreement. But each project has their own schedule inputted in the back that completes before the term of the grant. And so some amendments just do the project schedules, and some amendments can do the term of the grant. And I know we have done that before for Prop 84 grants. 2016, 17, for the levy projects in zone 1A.
The nuance you're pointing out was that that extension was during the construction phase. Not in anticipation of needing longer for the whole project. It's kind of nuance.
So then I guess the question is, if it's looking at, can we get the amendment with an extension if we begin construction during the time of the grant? I mean, that's what DWR would have to be considering, right?
Yeah, I think we would be asking DWR to extend the term of the agreement for a project that I think it would be fair to say is, a year plus 2 years behind the schedule, that was submitted and is in generally the same place that it was. Or same place schedule wise, but with less benefits. And I think that's the part that gives me, I don't think this is I don't think it has a high likelihood of being approved based on my experience with DWR. And again, I don't think I'm authorized to ask, and why I'm, here doing this process. So, if the board want to direct us to do a parallel path again, I'd find the time to do that, so.
So clarify the parallel path again.
Peter had to run.
Okay.
I think I understand what he was saying. So his point was, let's let DWR make the final decision, make the final decision about if this project still qualifies for the grant. I'm gonna read into his question a little bit. Let them make that decision. At the same time, gear up do the call for projects, get projects in a list, see what their decision is. I think, would that be a fair interpretation, Courtney? The proposal?
Yeah, I guess the other way I was thinking about it is, they could, in essence, submit the current project in the call for projects,
This was my thought, yes.
and if it went out, because there's nothing else going to be constructed next summer that has grant required benefits or eligible benefits, then it just naturally is an amendment to what we already submitted. So anyway, that was the way my mind was working. So in essence, it kind of is doing the same things, but it's not as explicit as changing the wording. And I'm trying to see if, but then, we want to have good timing. So I could see the benefit of checking with DWR formally at the same time as doing the call for projects. Just
Yeah, no, I was waiting for you calling me. Of course, Pismo would appreciate the parallel track. It allows us the opportunity to keep moving, but it also seems like a good way to protect the money. Because you would have that fall back in place. And yes, and I guess, I would guess we could also apply to that, but it keeps a loss from occurring. They have the parallel path.
I have low confidence of the amendment as it would appear to be right now being approved. I do understand letting DWR make that decision and instead of having us make that decision for them. But we're again, with the information we have, I think the project is not the same project. And so, that's what we're, where it's at, and I would need the board of supervisors to tell me to do that. Scott?
Sorry, thanks, Brendan. I'm ready to support staff's recommendation too, but the reason I asked about the timing thing is I'll be biased on my project as a water resource recovery project, with water side of things. ready to go to bid in the next couple of months. Scheduled to complete around May of 27. So I don't want to just like, we'll be done by March 31st to get into the floor. So I don't know, but for the look at that, I'm kind of getting into the weeds a little bit, but I still think it's a good idea to do a call for projects to see what those things are, other than my problem.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody in this room is giving that reason.
Without getting into too much details, you'll notice this project was submitted as just the wells component. We had a project with the city of Slow in the round one grant. It was just the UV and MBR component of their larger project. That component completed construction before the project came online by like a year. And we were closed out before the project was fully online and operating. So there are, it was all in parallel construction. So I think it's safer to fund a portion that was dependent on a larger project, but they were all under the same construction contract. So there are opportunities like that. And I say this not to your benefit, but for the group's benefit of, having, and it works out for funding if you have federal loans and state loans doing certain parts and pieces. Having a state grant for one part can help in that funding matrix, and this is match for that and different things. So there are ways to do that. Also helps with the match and things instead of providing we want 500,000 for $100 million project, and you're doing 50 million in match for, gets rid of all of that. So like being able to put a piece of a project in that accomplishes a certain goal is possible, which is what we've done here, what we've done on multiple projects.
Can I ask, just because I don't know, how many voting members are here today?
Sure, that's a great question. I have that written down. We have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have 8 members here today, and the quorum is 3. And the district is present, but we won't be voting. Yes.
You say the project is a different project, but it's just a scaled down model of the same project in the same water basin. So it has the same impact. We'll go over Oceana or Grande.
I would disagree, but
Why is it different? I mean, it's smaller, it's narrow.
though I would,
Why is it different?
sure, the project that was presented in 2022 had 4 injection wells, and the project description said up to 4. The map provided had 4 wells that were in Oceano and Grover Beach area, so south of Carpenter Creek, near in the Meadow area along Highway 1. The current project is 1 injection well within the city of Pismo Beach limits. The total amount of water that could be injected is reduced from up to 900 acre feet down to 350 acre feet. So things like that are why the project is also not in the current construction window of the grant. And at the time it was. So for those facts, and we say the project is significantly different than what was.
Why that took it reduces some of the unhappiness with the project, and placing that in Oceana would pull back, and it reduces controversy, but we could still get up to 600 potentially. We're pushing that 350, but you're correct, it's just a scaled down version. And we did say in the grant up to 900 acre feet and up to.
I mean, because there's not much difference between Oceana and Pismo Beach and Grand. I mean, that's what I was looking at, you're still in the same basin, still impacts the total.
I think that's fully one way to look at it.
Thank you.
So when you propose this, are you calling it Central Coast Blue, or how are you doing with student?
Well, some of it's JPA 1 at this point, and the other grants are still in the name of Central Coast Blue. So it's easier to maintain the name. Now, we will need to come up with something else, most likely in the future. But because we already have agreements, we'll continue to call it Central Coast Blue for now.
Brendan, you said in your opinion, you don't think DWR would approve this project.
An amendment to extend the grant term for a project that frankly hasn't progressed from the time of application
Okay.
is
so
a
there-
long shot.
It's
There's the word I was looking for.
lack.
Well, progression in terms of, we haven't started construction yet, there's a lot of work that has gone on to make sure that we can proceed. And yes, there are some documents need to be freshened up. Because it's a reduced project, but that also means we reduce our impact. There's very little of this project that's still in the coastal zone. So that even makes it easier to get that consolidated permit.
So.
I appreciate the friendly disagreement about it.
So, I mean, where would they have to be to qualify in your opinion? At what point would they?
Well, I think that's why we're here today in, in conversations with management, up to Director Diodati and, what the options and where the project is at. That's why we need the direction. So this is the first forum. We'll do it again this afternoon with the RAC of this is the situation. We need the board to tell us something to do because all we can't do our normal administering the grant. So this is out of that realm of normal administration for a project. We'd like the term to be extended a year for a project that's doing less than was awarded. That's a tough ask without coming back and checking with everyone saying, is this the right thing to do? Is this what's best for the county? Is this what we intended to do when we authorized the grant? And those are the questions I don't think we can answer as staff right now. So that's all. Yeah. Thank you.
So Brendan, when, if it were to go out again for solicitation of projects, is there, so there, I'm assuming that there's a possibility that it could be 2 or 3 projects that use $1 million. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, my preference would be 3 or less, just from an administrative standpoint.
Right.
We already have 4 of the projects in the grant now. San Miguel's basically done with theirs, so will be done by the end of the year. So, right, Peter's not here, but I think they will. So that makes it a little easier. There's not a maximum by the grant or whatever, but just, I think, I would say 3 or less from an administrative standpoint. Otherwise, Joey's brain will explode. There's not any other questions. I don't know if the group would like to, Scott mentioned making a motion. I don't know if the group would like to consider anything. Just from a process standpoint, the Water Resources Advisory Committee will also be hearing the same item this afternoon, and then we will go to the board. It will be this summer, to get that direction.
One last question. Is there any possibility of funds being reimbursed for projects completed prior to the?
Thank you. This is a great question.
What
So
would that process kind of look like?
if a new project were to be brought in to the grant, that the reimbursement date for grant funds would be the date it was amended into the agreement. So, which is why we are here today. We don't feel like we can wait any longer. If a replacement project or projects are going to come in, we'd be looking at an amended agreement date of March 2026, which would give only a year for reimbursement for project activities. Match can go back to 2015, but for grant reimbursable tasks, it has to be worked between March 26 and March 27. Which is again why we need to come and get a decision now on what we're doing. We can't wait till December 2026 and be like, all right, there's 3 months left. Let's find another project. We'd be unable to do that. So, and I'm probably already cutting it close as it is. There's no right hasn't been, there's no playbook for this. This is a situation nobody would want to have happen. But we do feel like, okay, a year is probably the minimum we need to give an agency or a number of agencies to complete construction activities that are reimbursement eligible. Thank you for that question. I didn't say that earlier.
Yeah, is that a realistic off the top of your head timeline that you just said? To go to more.
Let's say we could play it out July 15th, the board says go for a call for projects. Perfect world. I mean, August 15th, the call for projects opens. The closes in September, RWMG working group scores evaluates October, RWMG would select a new suite of projects or a singular project, or recommend, and I would attempt to do the Water Resource Advisory Committee that same day. Would be to the board in November. And that's 4 months with the holidays to submit to DWR and have an amended agreement. And I think that's probably aggressive.
You could, you thought about it. You said summer, it sounds like you already are charging the real high.
When I went through the 24-month timeline, that's mostly on DWR, not, I mean, maybe I could have shaved a few months off of that, but that's mostly on DWR.
I'll make a motion. Dash recommendation.
Thank you. Anything under discussion? Okay, I'll do a roll call. I'm gonna go through who I believe is here, and if your agency was not called, just please let me know. Cambria Community Services District, Tristan.
Aye.
City of Pismo Beach.
Am I allowed to vote?
I think so.
I'll vote
It's a recommended, it's an advisory vote, so. City of San Luis Obispo,
Stay.
Heritage Ranch Community Services District.
Yeah.
Los Osos Community Services District.
Yes.
Morro Bay National Historic Program. So yes. The Como Community Services District
Yes.
and Oceano Community Services District. All right, that would be 6-1. Scott,
The rack this afternoon, and for this meeting
it's like the simplest way to describe how the rack fits in is it's a second opinion. So the RWMG recommendation is the main driver to the board, but the rack is it's the way it's kind of structured is it's RWMG is not really a subcommittee to the rack. RWMG directly goes to the board, but the rack is obviously all the similar agencies and more water interested stakeholders and members, and so it's written in as kind of a it's like a second thing. With that, we will be meeting after the board date, and I'll go through whatever happens at the board of supervisors, and if it is our recommendation, I'll have the draft call for projects documents, brushed off from 3 years ago to review and make sure see if that's what we want to go with, and we'll hopefully pick a date and get this thing rolling. So any questions, you can contact me. Otherwise, some of you I'll see this afternoon, and I'll let you know where we're at here in July.